We've all heard the term mind-body connection, right? But it can sound a little, a little fuzzy. What does it actually mean in a biological sense? Well, today we're going to make it concrete. We're going to trace the hard science step by step, following the precise path from a single thought in your head all the way to a real physical change in your body. And believe me, this journey goes way deeper than you might think.
So let's just start with the big provocative question. Can a single thought physically change your DNA? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, doesn't it? But this isn't some hypothetical riddle. It's the very real question we're diving into. We're going to follow the evidence and see if your thoughts can actually rewrite your body's most fundamental code.
So how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this? The best way to think about it is like a biological domino effect. It's this incredible cascade where one tiny event triggers the next, and it all starts with something as simple as seemingly untouchable as a belief.
And this is the roadmap for that whole process. It unfolds in this really clear sequence, a perfect chain reaction. We're going to start with a simple, everyday situation. Watch how our brain slaps a meaning onto it and how that triggers an emotion and then a flood of chemicals. And we'll follow that chain right down to the level of our genes and ultimately to our real-world health.
Okay, so here's the first domino, and it is absolutely crucial. The whole journey doesn't actually begin with the situation itself. It begins with how our brain interprets it. Scientists have a name for this. They call it cognitive appraisal. But all it really means is that our brains aren't just passive cameras recording what happens. They're actively telling a story about it.
Let's ground this in something we can all relate to. Imagine this email just drops into your inbox. No context, just, can we meet? Your heart might do a little flip, right? But what happens next in your body is completely 100% dependent on your internal wiring.
And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. That exact same event can send your body down two totally different biological roads. If your underlying beliefs tend to be a bit pessimistic, your brain might instantly flag this as a threat. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. But if you're more optimistic, you might see a huge opportunity. Yes, the promotion. This isn't just a mood. It's a split-second biological decision happening in your brain.
Deep inside your head, your prefrontal cortex, that's kind of the thinking part, is having a rapid-fire conversation with your limbic system, which is your emotional hub. Together, they slap a value judgment on that email. Is this scary? Or is this exciting? And that decision is what topples the next domino.
Because that emotion you feel, whether it's fear or excitement, isn't just a vague feeling in your head. It's a direct order to what you can think of as your body's own internal pharmacy to release a flood of incredibly powerful chemicals. So, what exactly is in that chemical cocktail?
Well, if your brain appraised that email as a threat, this system right here kicks into high gear. The HPA axis, it's your body's central command for stress. When it gets the signal, it triggers that classic fight or flight response we've all heard about.
And this just perfectly illustrates the two completely different chemical cocktails. The threat appraisal floods you with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, jacking up your heart rate, getting you ready to run. But the opportunity appraisal, that releases dopamine, oxytocin, all those feel-good chemicals that make you feel rewarded and relaxed.
Now, here's a super important point. A short little burst of stress can actually be good for you. It can give your immune system a temporary boost. The real problem is when that stress response gets triggered over and over and over again. That's chronic stress, and it throws your immune system out of whack and cranks up inflammation throughout your body.
Okay, I want you to take a breath because we have just arrived at the most mind-blowing part of this entire chain reaction. Those chemicals, the cortisol or the dopamine, they don't just fade away. They act like tiny messengers, traveling through your bloodstream to deliver instructions directly to your cells, all the way down to your DNA. They can literally help rewrite your biological software.
This is the incredible science of epigenetics. The easiest way to think about it is this. Your DNA sequence, that's your hardware. It's fixed. But epigenetics is the software that tells that hardware which programs to run. And your experiences, your thoughts, your emotions, they can actually rewrite that software.
So think of it like this. Every major experience you have, from your childhood right up to what you felt 5 minutes ago, can leave these tiny chemical tags, like little sticky notes, on your DNA. These tags don't change your genes, but they act like dimmer switches, turning the activity of certain genes up or down. In a very, very real way, your life story gets physically written into your biology.
61. Just look at that number for a second. 61. What in the world could that possibly have to do with your thoughts changing your genes?
Well, that's the punchline. One landmark study found that after just 8 hours of mindfulness meditation, skilled practitioners showed epigenetic changes at 61 different spots on their genes. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't something that takes a lifetime. Your mental state can create measurable physical changes in your body in a single day. So what's one of the key things these epigenetic switches control? Well, one of them is the production of proteins like BDNF. You can basically think of this stuff as miracle grow for your brain. It helps you grow new brain cells, forge new connections, and its production is directly influenced by this whole cascade we've been talking about.
All right, so now it's time to connect all the dots. We've gone from a thought, to a feeling, to a chemical, to a change in our genes. So what? What does this actually mean for our health in the long run? This is where that final domino falls.
Well, the cost of hitting that stress button again and again is steep. When your body is constantly marinating in cortisol, it hammers your immune system, it promotes inflammation, and it's heavily linked to things like depression. And over time, this contributes to some of the biggest, baddest chronic diseases we face today.
And, this process starts really early. Traumatic experiences in childhood can leave these epigenetic marks that last a lifetime, setting someone up for health problems decades down the road. It just goes to show how deeply our experiences are woven into our biology.
But, and this is probably the most important part of this entire story, this is not a one-way street. You are not a prisoner of your past experiences or your biology. The same science that shows how we get worn down also shows with incredible clarity that we have the power to consciously change these pathways for the better.
We can literally write a healthier story into our cells. We just saw how something like meditation can change gene expression in a matter of hours. Building strong, supportive relationships can physically buffer our bodies from the effects of stress. And we can practice what scientists call cognitive reappraisal. We can consciously choose to see that boss's email not as a threat, but as the opportunity we talked about right at the beginning.
This quote just sums up the entire domino effect perfectly. It's one long, interconnected biological process. It starts in the mind and it ends in the cells of the body. It's not magic, it's just biology.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that the stories you tell yourself aren't just stories. They become your biology. Every single day, your beliefs are physically writing and rewriting your health at the genetic level. Which leaves us with one final and I think very powerful question. What story will you choose to write?